Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal, and as of this next weekly reset, we got a pretty sizable buff coming to World of Warcraft, which includes a variety of different class changes, which means buffs to some of the playstyles that are being underrepresented so far for the Season 3, but also nerfs to some of the more overly represented playstyles as well. This set of changes is going to include both PvE specific updates as well as PvP specific changes as well. This set of updates is actually going to be part of a bigger update to World of Warcraft, as we now know that something is arriving Tuesday or Wednesday reset depending on your region, which will result in all of the servers having a bit of a considerable downtime, which is unusual for something like a simple hotfix buffing and nerfing some of our classes. This could mean potentially new content is on the horizon for World of Warcraft much earlier than many of us have expected. So for today's video, I wanted to go over this whole list of class changes upcoming in this next weekly reset and go over how every one of your favorite playstyles may potentially be impacted when it comes to endgame content. But right before we get into this new set of buffs and nerfs, most of you guys watching these kind of updated videos are still not subscribed. However, the more of you remind, the more of you do. So let's keep it going. Subscribe to the channel and ring the bell if you're watching these videos anyway, especially if you want to get more regular content regarding Dragonflight 10.2.5 or any future updates for patches like 10.2.6 or the War Within Alpha. First of all, to give you all a bit more background, this weekly reset is going to be happening on Tuesday or Wednesday depending on your region. This is a much longer update than many of us have expected for a simple set of class tunings, unless this update for some reason is fixing certain critical in-game issues or maybe is patching thousands of bugs in-game on top of the additional changes. It does seem kind of a hefty update to just come out of nowhere. And there's a good chance that it may be the patch 10.2.6, which we've been waiting for some time. 10.2.6 has been one of the first patches for WoW in a long while that didn't have any kind of data mining for it or any PTR testing, though the devs have been teasing that it's going to be an exciting patch with a ton of content that most people expect. But only time will tell if this update may actually end up being a 10.2.6 update. Now to get into some of the PvE class changes, starting off with the Restoration Druids, where we see Rejuvenation Healing buffed by 12%, which means additional single target healing increases, but also even bigger ramp up windows within raids, where a Druid would ramp up by sparing Rejuvenations to as many targets as possible before raid-wide damage approaches, which is going to give them quite a bit of a healing bump. The healing spec of the Evoker, Preservation, is also seeing additional survivability healing increases. Because the spec plays with a much shorter healing and ability range compared to every other playstyle, it can sometimes put itself into more dangerous situations that most healers don't have to deal with. So therefore, emergency as well as survivability increases are being added to Preservation to make him less punishing to pick up. We see buffs to emergency talents such as Time of Need, as well as basic healing damage increases to Life Giver's Flame, as well as survivability increases for inherent resistance magic reduction, as well as attuned to the Dream Healing Done and Healing Received talent. For the class of Hunter, both Marksman and Survival are gaining a 3% damage increase, which also applies for your pets. One of the most exciting of all changes because it doesn't necessarily hit on any specific aspects of either spec, but it does overall increase the viability for PvE content. The spec of Frost Mage is receiving additional changes with more buffs to abilities such as Flurry, as well as your water elemental abilities such as Water Bolt and Water Jet. Abilities such as Frostbolt and Ice Sense are also slightly improved as well, which results in a general single target increase, but also an AoE goodness increase as well, since you basically have the same rotation in either AoE or single target situation. It would just include Blizzard when hitting multiple enemies. For Mistweavers, we see kind of a confusing set of new changes. Basically, the base healing of the spec is being nerfed by 6%, but talents such as Jade Fire Stomp healing and damage has been slightly buffed, as well as Expel Harm healing buffed, so I guess they wanted to nerf the entire whole kit except for a handful of abilities. For Subtlety Rogues, we're seeing an Eviscerate nerf, which is going to result in less single target damage output. Subtlety as of recently has become one of the more popular specs for single target, but I guess is getting a little bit too far ahead of Assassination or Outlaw. We also got a nice buff to Elemental Shamans with all of their damage increased by 3%, and as an Elemental enjoyer, I'm a big fan of these changes. It doesn't quite hit up on all of the issues with Elemental, but it does make him a little bit stronger for endgame content. Now we got a whole new set of PvP exclusive buffs up next, starting off with the Havoc Demon Hunters, which are receiving a bit of a nerf this week. We see overall survivability nerfs across the board, with reductions to talents such as Demon Hide, Scars of Suffering, Illidari Knowledge, and Will of the Illidari. We also see burst damage reductions to Essence Break damage buff window, as well as the 2-set tier set bonus additional glaive tosses nerfed by 50%, which will result in less burst as well as less cleave damage. For druids, we're primarily seeing survivability increases for feral and balance specs, with the frenzied regen no longer nerfed in PvP content, which will hopefully make those two playstyles a little bit more survivable, while also fixing some of the Restoration Druid PvP buff interactions within arena and rated content. For hunters, we see two specs, Beast Mastery and Survival, receiving a few buffs. For Beast Mastery, your kill shot is going to hit roughly 15% harder in PvP content. For Survival, that buff is going to be applied to either Raptor Strike or Mongoose Bite, roughly by 16%. Then we have the class of Mages, where we see quite a lot of changes, especially for the spec of Fire. Before we get into any specific specs though, Ring of Fire PvP talent will overall do less damage. The Arcane Mage survivability is also being hampered a little bit as of this reset, with the Prismatic Barrier's magic damage reduction effect being slightly nerfed, and they also nerfed the reduction of magic effect duration feature of the Arcane Mage shield. For the spec of Fire, which have been kind of out of the spotlight for PvP, we're seeing buffs all across the board, with a roughly 20% buff to Meteor, 17% buff to Fireball, 100% buff to Scorch, roughly a 6% buff to Fire Blast, and a 360% buff to Living Flame, which is quite sizable. Next, we have the healing Mistweaver Monk, and for PvP they're being buffed all across the board, with healing increases to Vivify, as well as the Invigorating Mist Cleave healing, but also single target healing buffs to Soothing Mist base healing, as well as the Jade Serpent statue Soothing Mist counterpart. The healing spec of Holy Paladin is actually getting some offensive bonuses as of this reset, with the PvP talent of Denounce roughly buffed by 70%. The Judgment ability by itself is going to deal 50% more damage within PvP content, while the Greater Judgment Absorb damage is increased by 30%, which is going to put Holy Paladins a bit more on the offensive. Another healing spec that's getting additional offensive buffs is going to be Discipline, with the ability of Smite buffed by 25% within PvP, while overall Atonement healing is being improved by 8%. It feels like the spec of Outlaw has sprung up out of nowhere when it comes to their popularity in Season 3. As of this reset, they are seeing some survivability and party buff reductions. First of all, the talent of Float Like a Butterfly is being nerfed, which will mean less evasion uptime in PvP combat, but also we see slight damage reductions to the Precision Shot talent. Take Your Cut PvP talent is also being nerfed both in its haste value as well as a reduction to its overall party duration. Enhancement Shamans are going to be seeing a 25% healing buffs to their Healing Surge ability, which will hopefully improve the overall PvP survivability. Warlocks are seeing a bit of a movement reduction this week with the Soulburn Demonic Circle, with the buff lasting only 4 seconds, and only increasing your movement speed by 30%, which is less of its original value. For Destro specifically, we also see their tier set, the Flame Rift ability, being reduced by 30% in PvP content. And finally, we have the class of Warrior, where the Cacophonous Roar Fear Breaker is going to be slightly less effective in PvP. For both Arms and Fury, we're seeing Execute damage buffs as well, where for Arms, Execute is being buffed by roughly 10%, while Fury gets a roughly 15% ability increase. And with that, that's going to be the full list of class changes coming out with the Tuesday or Wednesday weekly reset. As always, I want to hear all your thoughts down below. What do you think about some of the upcoming changes coming out in the weekly reset? Also, what are your thoughts about this patch potentially being the faded, rumored, and the secretive patch 10.26? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. As per usual, if you guys enjoyed this video or found it informative, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. I would very much appreciate it. And as always, in the description of every single video and live stream, we have a link to our Discord community channel. Probably the best place to reach out to me directly in case you want to let me know what you thought about this video or hang out with the rest of the community to discuss some of the upcoming changes. join our Discord to become part of the community. But otherwise, thank you all so much for watching this video. I do hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know all of your thoughts down below, and as always, I'll see all of you guys in another video.